Yeah, I'm Dhruv, one of the founders of Create.
And I'm Zaria, the founding designer at Create.
Told Zaria she had to come. It's a AI for Designers meetup, and she happily complied the day like an hour before. But in a nutshell, Create is a new AI design and dev tool we're working on that turns anyone into a developer. We're working on text to app, so the ability to just describe the application you're building, and then very quickly see working code for it and going code up to everything you need. And so when we launched a couple of months ago, we started with UI components. We quickly moved up from there to sites and prototypes. And we're now starting to get to the realm where just with the description, you can quickly build AI-powered tools. And we're excited to show you some of that tonight. How we're seeing designers use it is in really making interactive prototypes and components a lot faster and collaborating with their engineering counterparts in their organization or on their team, or just, generating more ideas in concert with the LLM. So we'll show those off. And then where we're going is having designers being able to actually make their own tools without necessarily needing to involve engineers or collaborate with engineers. And so I think what Zaria and I will show you tonight is I'm more of an engineer by training. Zaria is a designer by training, and yet we can collaborate just a lot better working together on top of Create. And so before I start and just jump into a demo, the radical thing I'd say is that we believe at Create in 10 years, most software will be created with natural language. And if you believe that, the question is, well, then what is the tool set that you use to create software with natural language? How do you make that easy? How do you manage that? How do you collaborate on top of that? And so we're taking a stab at it. But this is the tool. It's pretty straightforward. You have, a description on the right, and we go ahead and render the code for whatever you want to create in the main screen. Most people are familiar with very simple prompts. So to motivate with like a real use case, here's our pricing page. We've launched a bunch of things. We're about to update this. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's generate some ideas for a new pricing page. And so I like using LLMs this way. So make me a pricing page for a SaaS AI app builder, right? And as I type, it starts to actually build the code. And my favorite part of this is just actually honestly to get some ideas. And so in like the idea generation space, it's really great. It's a fairly basic, prompt. And so as a result, it's not that detailed on what I actually want, but off the bat, it gives me a pretty standard looking pricing page. If I'm not happy with, how this first version is kind of going, I can always hit try again and just generate the entire thing from scratch. So I'll do that because this looks too basic. We'll see if we, win the lottery a little bit. And what's happening under the hood is we are streaming the actual code outputs from the LLM. And this is full React code written with Tailwind. We're actually auto-fixing any of the issues and any of the outputs that the LLM have on the fly. And then we're rendering it. So that code always renders. And so this is cool. It's full code up. I think this is actually, what do you think?
Yeah, I like this one. This one's fun.
Yeah, it's a cool start. But the cool thing is you can start to work with the LLM to actually build from here. So I'm like, this is kind of basic, but I also, for my new version of the pricing page, I want a bit more stuff. So I'm going to say have the following sections. And as I'm typing, it is taking the previous version of the code and my updated spec to basically rebuild the entire app. So I'm going to have a hero section with a title and a subtitle. And then I want the pricing options. And then I want some testimonials. And I'll stop there for now. And now I can basically wait for it to kind of go ahead and build these pieces. If it messes up at any point, Create actually tracks the revision history of all your different, revisions. And so you can step back into the future and or into the past. Sorry. I wish you could step back into the future. And jump back to something that kind of worked. In addition, because it's code, it's instantly live, right? So it really collapses the time from design. Like if you can get it to look exactly like you want here, you just press publish and you can share it with your team, or give it to a user. And so we're seeing early users use this to like really shrink the time from design to live, and get going. The final thing is that because it's just English, the interesting thing we're noticing is that different people are better at talking to the LLM in different ways. And so from the start, we started building collaboration. So I'm going to go ahead and invite Zaria to help me with this project. I can probably give it some descriptions on like how I want the functionality to work if the React code's not quite right. And Zaria is probably a lot better than me at kind of describing how its like brand will be. So while she's logging in, I think one last thing I should show before we start like working together on this is, in addition to like plain text, you can also use like vision and GPT vision through Create to really speed up the process. And so even though I can click on these different pieces and just go ahead and change the underlying code, I can also just say like, put all the text in the pricing options from this photo, because I'm not really going to change my like core feature set or my core, descriptions of the different plans. And it'd be a lot more efficient if it could just go ahead and copy that over. And so, there's just new types of workflows you can do. We see a lot of designers join Create on our site and then kind of use Create as like a mood board. They might just screenshot a bunch of different things around the internet, put them together, especially at the start of a new project, and get it to start outputting the code for it. So Zaria is going to jump in here and also start to work herself.
Yeah, exactly. So this actually looks pretty good, but of course we want to make sure it looks like our brand. If it's going on our site, we want to be able to customize it a little bit. So it's really easy actually to add in design feedback. So if we wanted to add a font, I can just kind of use the font enter. You can use any Google font. You can just reference it by name and you'll see it's going to rebuild and it's going to start using that font instead of what it had before. You're also able to change things like color, like we have our brand kind of color for all of the text on our site. And I can just kind of put in that hex code and it's going to change all of our text color to match that hex code. Not only can you kind of get specific with specific fonts and specific hex codes, you could also type in, make this red, make this blue, make this light red, make it light blue. You can reference things with pixels. You could say, put these two elements 4 pixels apart or round the corners by 10 pixels. But you could also just say, I want a button with slightly rounded corners, or I want something that is completely square. So you can get very kind of specific, or you can take a step back, which really helps when you're, just prototyping or trying to get inspired. There's a lot of flexibility in what you can try out and really kind of get more specific as you figure out what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool is Zaria is actually sometimes better at describing to the LLM than what we at the Eng team is. And so very quickly, she can actually prototype features in Create itself just by like describing, what she's looking for. And then we can go grab the code from that, and we can either copy it or download the project and integrate it into our repo and get it to ship. And so from here, there's one other thing that I want to show, which is that this is nice. It's a single page app, but to build more complex apps, we're actually launching something today, which should be familiar to most people in product building, which is components. So to make a component, right, you can just click on either the spec itself. So you can if I have these pricing options and I'm going to specify it, I'm actually going to convert this to a component. And this will be like pricing card, right? And if I create this, it will go ahead and open up a new editor for the pricing card, and I can go ahead and just describe in more detail the pricing card and how it should work and what it should look like. It basically allows us to like shrink the context that the LLM has to take into account. And so you can add a lot more detail and fine gain control at this point. And then once you've locked it, when you jump back to your actual pricing page, you'll see that it's now been replaced with the component, and I could go ahead and update, my component. The other way you can build components is actually just from the code itself. So you can grab, it's still building right now. Got to go figure that out, and rebuilding as I do this. But you can click on things and convert them rapidly to components. I think the demo gods right now are not being that kind. Building full prototypes is interesting, but as a workflow in like an existing product, I think what we've been encouraged by is the ability to also use Create to actually just make these components on their own. And again, the advantage is that because you're making them in code, they're exactly what it would be like if they shipped to prod. And so here's a component Zaria made. I'll let you talk through how you made it.
Yeah, so this one's really fun. This is just kind of a basic menu design we were talking about. I wanted all of the icons to switch on hover, and I wanted a little kind of, line to follow them. So when you're hovering over the icons, the file changes, and you can see that there's like a little blue line on hover. So we made this in honestly like 15 minutes with this text and then 3 different components. So each of these individual icons is a component with 2 kind of SVGs where all we wrote in between was, hey, on hover, can you switch the SVG? So you'll see this text kind of right there, the on hover, the icon should be replaced with. And then that we were able to rapidly sort of prototype this menu that is in full code. So I kind of like this better than having to, create a bunch of mocks and, prototype them together, because you do have the flexibility of saying, hey guys, I already built this. Actually, if you want to use it, you can just take the code and it's ready to go.
Yeah.
This one also is great. And I think this actually hits like a very unique opportunity where you want a prototype where people are able to, type in what they want and really get a feel for how it's actually going to work. So for this prototype, you're able to type in words that are then going to become kind of tabs underneath that you can exit out of, you can clear, you can keep adding to. And so this is one of, I think, the best opportunities to really get a feel for something that you can't just do in a design. Someone could come in, use this, I can send them the link, they can type in whatever they want, they can see what it looks like, we can troubleshoot together, and really get a kind of live feel for how this is going to be when it's a part of our actual product.
Yeah, and then the interesting thing is like if you actually go to the filter chip level, it's kind of natural language, but it looks a little bit like pseudocode right now, and we're building faster affordances to quickly update these things. Zaria is saying like medium weight text with these hex codes, an X that's about 10 pixels away, but she's just quickly jotting notes and then it's rendering at this level. By the time it kind of bubbles up, it really starts to feel like English. Like, okay, there's an input and you type, it's going to show me this chip, and she doesn't have to keep specifying those core details. And so we're building up the abstraction layer and software development from here. I think one of the things I'm most excited about is we now, because we're actually building React apps, are starting to venture into actually creating AI-powered tools.
I think something that is really fun about Create, especially as a designer, is that sometimes I feel very kind of removed from the code when I'm designing in Figma, which I think, a lot of us are prototyping in there. And then when something is built, it often feels different than your kind of static mock does. And so being able to really go in Create has helped me sort of understand the coding layer a little bit more. I'm able to really kind of plug things in, see how they feel, which I think matters so much more when it matters more than you think. And I think it catches me by surprise a lot how, I plug it into Create, I'm able to get something that actually works. And it makes me want to change my design. I'm like, you know what? Actually, this hover would be better. Or maybe I want to change, the color of this piece when I'm clicking on it. And getting all of those levels and all of those feelings is really fun to play with when I can just do it with English and I don't even need to, reach out to an engineer to help me mess around with all of those things.
Yeah, and similarly, I think in every organization and in places we worked in the past, there's lots of custom-built software that you have to run either your organization or your ops. And what we're excited about Create is just letting anyone be able to build that software on the fly for what they need. And so because we're building React apps, this is actually a tool, right, that we made in English. And if you set up your APIs, like your REST APIs, you just have to reference it. And then you can very quickly, in a few sentences, start to build quite complex tools, and Create's figuring out how to actually hook up all the code to talk to that API, pull in your data. You can reference our built-in AI integrations, which some designers who are working on AI products love because it allows them to very quickly on their own data prototype, oh, what if I make the prompt this to GPT? Like, how does that actually affect, the results And, under the hood, we're actually, making the call to the API endpoints, in this case with fake data, but if you publish it with real data and then sending your results to like GPT. And so, you can very quickly start to change different interactions or, components are working now. So, you can also create from the builder. So you can actually go ahead and convert this form to, a new type of form and start to actually specify exactly how you want that form to kind of look in apps like this. And I think with that, we are set. So happy to take any questions, and thank you guys so much. That is the code state at every revision. And so that allows you to just jump back to the previous thing. But then if you jump back, you can start rebuilding from there along with the LLM.
Yes, you're able to kind of nest them over and over again. They're global in your projects, so you're able to reference them on different pages. If you create, a header you really want across all of your different projects, you're able to just add that in.
We have a preview state where you can basically send a link to somebody, and it's a little bit of an obfuscated link. So, no one's going to guess it. And you can use that to kind of get feedback on something that looks like a real, web app. And then you can publish actually at a created.app domain. And on a pro plan, you can add your own custom domain to any of your apps. And so, we mean publish like live publish the same way if you use, any of the previous no code era tools, you can quickly publish and have it live on the internet for anyone to go to. It's a funny story. It's actually designed by a friend of ours, and it's because when Marcus and I started the company, we always thought it'd be really cool if you actually really had a code generator that could develop applications. Would it be possible to actually build the application you're building or the tool you're building in the application itself? And so the image that actually reminded us most of that was actually Escher's hands, of the drawing hands. And then our friend also found this brilliant way to also kind of make it look like the code symbol. And so I think we both were like, oh, it's code, but it's also Escher's hands. And so, yeah, let's create. We have a number of ideas there. So far, we haven't really moved yet into the backend place. You can connect your own APIs. And so if your APIs scale like it should be, we'll be fine and we'll actually scale with you. But yeah, no, our goal is like fully scalable applications that auto scale with your users and as you get usage as well. And so, we plan for that. It's fairly close to production code. I mean, there can be, there can be some tweaks. I think every developer has their own styles and things. And so I think what we are shooting for is a world where you verify the app is working. And then if you need to, you can kind of drop down to the code level to fix things, especially if we don't support it or if you need to actually make some changes. I think that's how we're thinking about it today. But it's written in TypeScript. It's type checked. You can actually check it in to GitHub. It's written with all open source libraries. Every developer then has preferences around, I like my code, my files be formatted this way. And I think what's really interesting is there's lots of tools that are kind of targeting existing developers and how you can help existing developers be more productive in getting code in the format you like. I think what we're excited about is that can you give the power of code to people who previously couldn't code at all? And so it's a little bit of a different trade-off you make in terms of we care a lot about it rendering on screen because we know a lot of our users may not be able to actually fix it like live, where you might care less if you're a developer, if that makes sense. Yeah. This is just the start. So we have so many ideas on and we're trying to push the pace pretty hard on how capable we can make these. The really exciting thing is the model layer is getting a lot better. And as that gets better, that actually rises and makes the applications you can build on top much more interesting. Speed is a big one. I think you probably caught that today. We're working on a number of things to both hide latency from the user, as well as just make it raw faster and easier to get code outputs. And then I think, I think it's going to be a challenge to keep it still simple, right? As you add more and more complexity, and how do you actually manage that? And that's probably Zaria's wheelhouse to make sure that stays simple.
Yeah. I think we definitely see, the challenge now as, helping you build something complex in a way that you are easily able to understand how to build that. And keep it simple, but allow you to build things that are really complex. And I think we touched on it a little with nested components, but kind of taking that idea farther, as things that you can build with Create get deeper and deeper. How are you able to add more detail and add more complexity and feel really confident in building the product that you're building?
Yeah, I think one other thing that we've focused a lot on in the early iterations is alignment. So as you're talking to Create, are you getting things that you expect? And if not, how fast is it to recover from those things? And how quickly can you get things that are more aligned? And so a lot of how we got to this real-time building aspect is we just found it helped users have more control. They could just add more details to the things that were slightly wrong. But I think as we do that, as we are getting more and more data, we're going to be able to make models that are much, much more aligned with exactly what a user means, because we'll see a lot of user behaviors of, when a user says this, they mean this when they're app building. So we curate a lot of the training examples that we use in any models we fine tune, and that can be kind of manual. And then we also do it from some of the user data around okay, are people going to this app? Do people like using this app? Is this app getting views and is interesting? But a lot of it is still manual curation and honestly curating and generating data that has the rules baked in. So what Zaria says is this interesting, good app in dark patterns. And I think as over time, we're trying to do that at the code level so that it takes into account UX patterns. But it's interesting. I don't know. Software is kind of changing. I think some of our favorite apps are the ones that break all the rules in terms of the standard UX patterns. And it feels like the internet's becoming a more fun place.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think AI is going to transform how we use apps and what UX does and what it is. And so I think it's fun to be part of that while it's changing and help other people create, in that new space as well.